Now here's a screenshot of a peer-to-peer or file sharing program. Unfortunately, this is directed at people, usually young people, who want to get, quote, free music, unquote. There is no such thing as a free lunch, but these are out there, as well as the nasties, and you may or may not be getting what you think you're getting. It's advisable to avoid these. If they are set up on a Windows computer on a limited user account, and if that user account gets infected, at least it will not infect the whole computer. That's why it's important to have everyone have a limited account. Now here's a close-up of the browser address bar. Notice we see the lock. We see the HTTPS. It's different color. In this case, it's green. And then we have the address itself. In this case, it's the My Web of Trust. Again, we're on slide 3 for protecting your computer. And again, the very first item, back up your valuable data. Bet you're getting tired of hearing that. It's that important, especially if you're a business. If you use your computer for critical activities such as shopping online or banking and paying bills, or maybe even checking your 401k account, make sure you use a strong password to access these sites. This password is going to be one of those situations where you don't want that to get into the hands of someone else. How could that happen? 2 ways. Either because your system got compromised and they now have control of your data without you knowing about it, or someone sits down at your computer and you have a post-it note stuck on there that says, oh, here's my banking information. No, don't do that. Unfortunately, passwords are one of those kinds of animals that require, well, they're complex. Let's look at a couple. You want your password to be between 8 and 12 characters. Just remember, longer is better. And they should contain a mixture of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. Well, that's easy to say, but can you remember all that? You should not use the same password on all of these special sites. You should use an individual password for each one. Here's an example of a password. And as you can see, it's a rather long password. It's 12 characters. And there's no way people are going to guess that. It's just virtually uncrackable. Unfortunately, it's virtually unable to be memorized. This is not something that, well, you're going to have to figure out a way to do that. We'll be discussing a presentation just dedicated to passwords. And until something better comes along, we're going to have to face the reality that passwords can be guessed. Passwords can be guessed by software in computers. Passwords, if they're long enough and mixed properly, are virtually uncrackable, unless you're the NSA. As you can see, here's an example of one that's somebody used a person's name and some numbers. Believe it or not, that is easily broken. That is a weak password. Still on how can I protect my computer? Again, number 1, back up your valuable data. Do not click on web links that come in unsolicited email. Now, we just went over that earlier with a slide. But I didn't mention is, even if it's from a friend or family person, unless you can verify that it truly did come from them. What do I mean by that? Some viruses can get onto persons' computers without them knowing about it because they don't have the antivirus software, or it's out of date, or it's not updated, or they're not updating their operating system. And that just happens to be a good friend of yours. Because of that, the software, the nasty software, the malware, hijacked their email addresses. And it has an email server built into it. So what does it do? It takes the email addresses from their address book and sends out an email to everyone that's in that address book, including you, and says, in a note or message, found this really great site, good restaurant, click here and gets the information. Well, you see it's from your friend, you trust your friend, you click on the link. You've now become part of the chain of distribution. What can you do in a case like this? As I mentioned earlier, when in doubt, don't click a link. I personally make sure that the people I deal with on a close basis, friends and family, I make sure that they're aware of these situations. But I might even pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, did you just send me an email? Oh, no, I didn't. That does two things. You just verified that they didn't send it, number one, or at least without their knowledge. And number two, they're probably infected. And then you should tell them about that. Do not open any file attachments in your email. And this is another one. Your friend sends you an email. There's an attachment to it. It says, great picture of the baseball game last night. And it's from your friend's address. So you click on the baseball picture. Turns out it's not a picture. Turns out it's a program. You've now just infected your computer. What should you do? The same thing, perhaps. Maybe don't click on a link. Don't click on a download file that's attached to your email unless you can verify it. Beware of those phishing attacks. These phishing attacks where you have these screens that look like they're from the FBI, the IRS, or your bank, or someplace where you have an account. You just happen to have an account at Citibank, and they send you a Citibank-looking type screen, and you can't verify their address. This is a phishing attack. You will be compromised. If you're not sure, think about it. If it's for example, the government's not going to send you an email. They're going to send you snail mail, or they're going to pick up the phone and call you. That should be a green light to go ahead and say, okay, I'm not going to do anything here. I'm just going to stop and let it go. Not all browsers are alike. When you get Windows, for example, it comes with Internet Explorer, a version of Internet Explorer, depending upon the version of Windows that you have. In the latter versions of Windows, it's a very good browser. However, in many of the things that it does are not standards compliant. Now, that's not a bad thing. It just means they're going to do it their way, which may not be the same way that the standards committees want to do. When that happens, you can get things that don't necessarily work properly when you're viewing things on the internet, or not checking things properly to make sure that the website is really a good website that you're going to. All of these browsers, they're not 100%, but all of them are competitors and all of them are very good. So when in doubt, in my case, I have 3 browsers on my computer. Do I need 3 browsers? No. But I use them depending upon what function I want to do. Do I use Firefox? Yes. Why? Because it has a lot of extensibility, where Internet Explorer doesn't. What's extensibility? I can get plugins for it and make it do things easier for me. I can block advertisements, for example. I can block pop-up windows. I can read books online. Can't do that with some browsers. These are just some of the things that you can do with them. I would suggest having at least one other browser to get online in case your Windows machine gets infected. Sometimes the nasties will block Internet Explorer from running. You will not be able to get on the internet. You can't download files to clean up your computer. Open up Firefox or Chrome and you can. Then you can download the file and clean up your computer. Now here's a good example of one of those phishing attacks that I mentioned earlier. And again, you have to be very careful. It's from PayPal. PayPal, for those that don't know, it's kind of like a payment system, that you can do over the internet that's accepted by many retailers throughout the country and the world. They're sending you a letter. It says that your PayPal account will expire soon. They want you to log on, you update your credit card information, and click Save. Click here to log into your PayPal account. Now, normally, you would say, oh, okay, I'll just do that. And it should open up PayPal, and then I should be able to do the things I need to do. However, at the very bottom of this screen, if you look, there's the address down at the bottom. HTTP, no S. PayPal always has an S. And then it says uspaypal.com-stz.info. Well, that certainly isn't PayPal. PayPal is paypal.com. usually HTTPS, PayPal.com. Right away, that's a red flag. Do not click on the link. If you do, you'll probably be directed to a website that kind of looks like PayPal, not the same address. You'll type in all that information, and you've just been hacked. Probably even identity theft. This is one of those situations where phishing is more of a situation called social engineering. Social engineering, they want you to not pay attention, but we want it to be familiar to you so that you just routinely do it. Here's an example of an email with attachments. Dear member, and then proceed to tell you exactly what they want, and they have 2 attachments. One of the attachments appears to be a file. The other attachment appears to be an address for a browser. You'll download both of these. The attachment with the file probably won't do anything because it's a text file. I know that. You don't know that. The link, though, which would be over here in the online banking verification, what that will do is that will open up a link to a website. The act of opening the link will trigger that other attachment. You've been compromised. That's just one scenario. There could be many other scenarios as how this happens. Be very, very careful. If you can't verify where it came from or to your satisfaction, then don't open the attachment. Okay, and lastly, sorry to browbeat you with this, back up your valuable data, no matter what it is. Whether it's personal data, documents, letters, email, you can even back up your email, back up your whole system. It depends on what you want to do and how to do it. Can you do it yourself? Yes, you can. Does it require a little knowledge? Yes, it does. Someone asked me a long time ago, I must know a lot about computers. I said, I know enough to get in trouble, which is probably true. But and then they said, well, you probably know how to change the oil in your car. And the answer is, yes, I could learn. I'm not going to learn. I'm going to have someone else do that. When in doubt, have someone, especially an expert. And there are plenty of experts around. They charge reasonable rates. Have them even tutor you on how to do certain things so you can see how it's done. Make that initial investment and then do it. In the case of data, back up your data. Okay, we have a couple of slides here to show you links of interest, the web of trust that I mentioned, how to get the software, internet software, and security software from Microsoft. Get NetWise, Malwarebytes, which is anti-spyware software, Super Anti-Spyware, which is another anti-spyware. Both of these are good. Both of these have very good reputations as well. And, of course, browsers, Firefox and Chrome. Chrome is the one produced by Google. Well, that concludes this presentation. In future presentations, we will be going into a little more technical detail with actual screenshots and actual videos of how to install certain pieces of software. For example, how to install anti-spyware software, how to install antivirus software. We'll be going over those in a little more detail. We will try to keep the technical speak to a minimum. It's better to show you than to tell you. Have a good day.